welcome here to TalkFCB and welcome back to the channel here today, guys, where we are going to be discussing the Champions League, because Barca now are on the verge of knowing who they will face in the round of 16 stage. We've got it down to two potential opponents, and those are Newcastle and Paris Saint-Germain. And coming up today, we're going to be talking about both of them, what playing each of them would mean, and we're going to be discussing which team we'd rather face. And there's a lot that goes into that question and why we'd rather face that team. So it's all going to be coming up for you. Lots of Champions League talk. So come on and let's do this. Because last night, of course, was a big night in the Champions League playoff round, and we saw a number of big results there and some big eliminations as well. Because one that we have to mention, Inter, they are gone. Last season's finalist, of course, and it was the most heartbreaking game of Barca's entire season last year, of course. The way that played out, it was horrific for us in the semi-final. It was the one that got away, really. But Inter this time around, they're no longer here. The finalists are out of the competition there because they lost by 5-2 on aggregate to Bodo Glimt. And I've got to say, what a team they are. Genuinely, we have all got to stand up and appreciate and applaud what they are doing in the Champions League this season. Not only in this game, but right throughout the tournament. They have been a breath of fresh air. The way they play with such conviction, such a clear style of play, and they are absolutely fearless. They genuinely believe they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. And on their budget, given what they are doing as a club, it is absolutely phenomenal to see. A club like them, the way they're playing right now, football needs that right now. In the age, of course, where it literally is about money, it's all about money, it's about big money in all the leagues. What Bodo Glimt are doing, it is absolutely admirable. And long may it continue. I really do hope they have a great run in this tournament. Now, elsewhere, we did see Real Madrid. They are through to the round of 16 stage. It wasn't exactly convincing, though. It certainly wasn't comfortable there in either leg, to be honest, against Benfica there. They scraped through after two pretty average performances, to be fair. Vinicius Jr. was the difference, to be honest, on both of those occasions. And I think so far, again, it's the pattern of their season. Real Madrid getting through, even in La Liga, of course, they're within touching distance of Barca. They're still now in the Champions League. They're there, they're right there to win these trophies. But they're just not really showing all of that much right now. But of course, when they're in the competition, whilst they are around, you've got to take them seriously. And Galatasaray, what a result for them last night. They knocked out Juventus in a game that went all the way to extra time, deep into extra time there. Victor Osimhen, we spoke about him in the last video. He was on the score sheet in this one and actually follows on from 2 assists that he got in the first leg of that one. So a massive result there for Galatasaray and disappointment for Juve. And I think, to be honest here, guys, the only positive moment for Serie A, it came from Atalanta. They overturned a 2-goal deficit. And this game as well, it was really, really late stuff. It was late drama. They sealed it with a 98th minute penalty to dispatch Borussia Dortmund. But I think right now, guys, even despite this result here, these are alarming times for Italian football. I think what they've shown in Europe this season, it has been very, very concerning. And they're not the only ones. We've experienced this ourselves with La Liga, with the way that Spanish football is going right now. It's not good. I think a lot of the top leagues in the world, aside from the Premier League, they've got a few problems and they need to be figured out in some way or another, because there has been quite an alarming slide, you'd have to say. But of course, guys, now we do move on to the job in hand. Now we do move on to Barca's potential Champions League opponents in the round of 16 stage. And it is going to be either PSG or Newcastle United. And we are going to find out for sure on Friday in the latest Champions League draw. And of course, we have had to wait a long, long time here to decide our fate, to understand who we're going to be facing. And we'll also get to know on Friday which side of the draw we're going to be on. What is going to be our route to the final. And I do have to say, guys, I don't think the wait is helpful. For Barca, for lots of teams here who've gotten through to the round of 16 stage, they've had to wait such a long time. And then not knowing, I mean, usually at this round, you'd have a lot of time to prepare yourself. You'd have plenty of weeks here to research your opponent, to analyse them, to scout them, to understand the game plan that you'll need to beat them. This time around, you're looking at the fixtures coming up for Barca. We're going to be playing this game on the 11th of March. It is only just around the corner, and we still don't know who that is even going to be. And when you're looking at our upcoming fixtures, guys, we've got Villarreal at the weekend, then the second leg of the Copa against Atletico Madrid. We've got away at Athletic Club, then the first leg in the Champions League away as well, and the home leg, I believe, is going to be their sandwich, potentially between Sevilla and Rayo Vallecano. So we've got some massive games to come. Second leg, though, will be at home, will be at the Camp Nou, and that will be huge. But in terms then of those potential opponents, let's have a look into the two of them, because let's start with Newcastle here, who absolutely dismantled Qarabag in the playoff round. I mean, you would expect that, really. Again, there's vast differences in terms of budget there and the ability to spend. 9-3 it was on aggregate there in the favour of Newcastle. And I think, to be honest, though, that is a much-needed confidence boost for them right now, because, to be honest, they've not had a good season. It has been a really average season there for Newcastle, so much so that pressure has started to build upon Eddie Howe. You know, since he's come in, he's done very well, delivered a trophy for them, but now things are getting a little bit, tetchy, a little bit stale maybe. They're only marginally ahead of their big rivals in the Premier League, Sunderland, who, of course, they only just came up. Newcastle right now are 11th in the Premier League. Now, of course, Barca, they've already played Newcastle this season. We met them at St James's Park right the way back in September. That was actually a close game. It was a game there that could have gone either way. The first half was very close. There was a massive save in there, I remember, from Joan Garcia. I mean, we've gotten used to that happening, haven't we? He's been making those ever since. But the second half, it belonged to Marcus Rashford. He was ultimately the match winner, the game breaker in that second half there. Brilliant header to open the scoring from a Jules Koundé cross there. Wonderful header. And the second goal, I mean, I'm sure you all remember it. What a strike. Long range, gets his head up and just drilled it there. Crossbarring in. What a goal it was. But even then, late on in the game, Newcastle got one back. It was a nervy ending. It was a close game. So Newcastle, they can't be underestimated, especially at home at St James's Park. They're a different team, they're a different animal, but you would expect Barca going into that game, if it is to be Newcastle, we would be favourites, because Newcastle's season, it has been underwhelming. Then, though, we do move on to Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, what can you say about them in the playoff round there? They came up against Monaco, a team that they know incredibly well, of course. They knew what they were going to be up against, and yet they were incredibly unconvincing. And it wasn't just about the second leg, it wasn't just about the first leg. Both games, they were very poor. And if it wasn't for Monaco having a player sent off in both games, they had one sent off there in the first leg, the same happened in the second leg. If not for that, I genuinely think we'd be talking about PSG exiting this competition at the playoff round. And that would have been extraordinary if we'd have had Inter and PSG both eliminated last season's finalists. That would have been crazy. But yeah, PSG for me, not just in the Champions League, but in Ligue 1 as well, they've been unconvincing for much of the season there. They did finish 11th in the Champions League standings. And I think, to be honest, they haven't quite hit the heights of last season there. It's not quite as energetic, the way they're buying into Luis Enrique's ideas, it's not quite at that same level. But all that I would say, and I would just say one word with PSG about them not quite being there yet. It hasn't quite happened yet this season. And of course, we did meet them again back in October at the Olympic Stadium. That was the first half again, could have gone either way. It was 1-1 at the break. But the second half of that game, guys, you will all remember well, unfortunately, we were dominated by PSG. They got control of the ball. They were really running around us. They were really making us look very ordinary, to be honest, in our own stadium. And I remember that late goal, Gonzalo Ramos there with the winner. It was the 90th minute. Hakimi had the entire pitch to run into there. He just sprinted into our half. Our defensive line, surprise, it was on the halfway line, even in the final minutes of a big game. And yeah, we were undone, and we deservedly lost that game against PSG. And by the way, that was a PSG team without Ousmane Dembele, without Doué, without Kvaratskhelia, without João Neves, without Marquinhos. So they certainly have a lot of players that we didn't face last time, if it is to be them. Now, what I would say about PSG as well, in regards to Barca here and a potential game, they are a team who have the tools to hurt us. And I'm talking there about the way the styles are sort of contrasting here. Barca's high line, PSG can hurt that. PSG have a number of players there with such pace, with such precision. You think about Nuno Mendes on one side, you think about Hakimi on the other side. It doesn't work like that against other teams all the time, but against Barca, they seem to absolutely come to life and dominate and really, really hurt us there. And I've got to be honest here, when you're thinking about which team you'd rather face, a lot of people will think, well, Newcastle. It's got to be Newcastle. They're the easier team on paper. It would be a game that you'd expect Barca to come through. Surely then, we hope to avoid PSG. But I think what I would say to that is, why? You know, at this point in the competition here, why are we running from anybody? Why are we hiding from anybody? Even if we do get an easier draw, we get Newcastle, then we get through to the next round, it only delays the inevitable. At some point here in this competition, you're going to have to come up against a big team. You're going to have to come up against a challenge that really gets in your face and that really does test you. Why not just do it now? Why not just get it over with here? Let's come up against PSG. Let's see how this team responds. Let's see what we're made of. You know, we've been waiting the whole season here to see Barca show themselves for what they are, to see Barca stand up on a big occasion. And let's just get it over with. And I would just like to see how we would respond to PSG's pressure, how we would respond to the pace in their team. Do we have enough to get beyond them? Because I'll just say this, guys. If you did beat PSG, if you come up against them, if you get through that challenge, if you move on, that is a massive statement. That is a serious message there to send out the reigning champions. And then suddenly, you got what it takes. Suddenly then, you can take that confidence, you can take that momentum into the rest of the tournament with you, rather than just trying to navigate your way through, you know, shying away from a challenge, trying to get the easiest draw. At some point, you've got to beat the best. To win this tournament, you've got to take on all comers. Let's have it now. Let's see what we're made of. Why don't we just play PSG? So indeed, guys, what do you make of that? Do you agree? You know, would you like to see Barca come up against Paris Saint-Germain? You know, I'm not saying here that we destroy them. I'm not saying here that we definitely beat them. I'm just saying, give us that challenge. We need to see where this team is at. We need to see how we can compete at this level, guys. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with that? And I really appreciate all of you guys being here. I really appreciate the support there. Great support as well on my last video. That really does mean a lot to me. And I will see you all soon. Tomorrow, once it is confirmed, I'll be here with you and we will be discussing our Champions League opponents, guys. So thank you indeed for watching. But until next time, as always, Veshka, El Barça.